this particular output and outcome. But of course, there's a lot more to do. And in terms of the implementation, we are working with the private sector, we are working with the National Association of Professional Environmentalists to do research, but also to give out, for example, solar cook stoves, fireless cook stoves, but also distribute solar lanterns, set up solar street lights in the dark spots where women, for example, do businesses around wash areas, plus so on and so forth. But I think the important issue is we are in pockets of Uganda, so the issue is scalability. We need more resources to be able to scale what we see is working. Thank you.
Thank you, UN Women. Any other comment from WWF? There was no specific question for WWF, but you have your last comment.
Well, I didn't hear, thank you, moderator. I didn't hear a specific question to me, but I agree with a couple of, I think most of them were comments about young people engaged in research, having money to invest in research, working, I mean, for instance, when we talk about the question of mobility, how it's important to work in multiple ways, working with different stakeholders, for instance, having a union on board on road designs, make sure that the road designs is able to take into consideration how you can have non-motorized movements. So I agree with a couple of comments made, and I want to thank the participants for these contributions, and I think certainly after here, I'm glad to have a bilateral engagements. Thank you.
And here is it.
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator. I think some of them, I fully agree with Ivan that we can pick up on them. For e-mobility, maybe just briefly, I think one of, we're not, let's say, moving as fast, but I think the important thing is there is political leadership. I think from head of state, including a number of ministries, task forces in place. So we expect that there will be a lot happening around e-mobility, and I think in terms of benchmarking, Rwanda would also be a very good example. But again, you're right, we're not there, or the country's not there, but it's something that I can see from a political leadership, a lot can be done. For young people, maybe that's something, again, we can have discussions on, but if you look at the climate work that we're doing, as we speak, the COP29 is taking place, and we've supported a number of young people, not only to attend the Conference of Parties, but also to support them to understand the negotiation process. Because remember, when Uganda goes out there, I mean, we have, as you mentioned, I mean, quite aged staff in the various institutions that participate. What happens in a couple of years when you don't, let's say, capacitate young people to be able to engage in climate conversation, in negotiation? So we support a number of young people to be able to understand the whole negotiation of climate topics, but also to participate in some of these key events. And that actually is the same thing with the women. In terms of our work that we do, there is not only just for the sake of working with women, it's actually a deliberate focus by the German government to focus, in some extent, actually 70% of the women in various activities, be it cooking energy or electrification. So in case there is that kind of more information that is needed, this is something that I'm sure some of my colleagues in the room can also provide some information. Lastly was the question on what is actually GIZ doing in the various challenges that I mentioned here. I think we have an advantage as GIZ because we work closely. Personally, I sit in Amber House where the ministry is, and we work closely on these challenges. We talk about them, but we try to address them. Maybe I'll just give you two of them. One, green climate funds into climate financing that is out there. I mean, it is a lot, and so many countries are tapping into it, but we've not had, let's say, substantial progress there. And that is a deliberate effort that took place from the Ministry of Finance, and I believe something will come out of it. The last one is on cooking. I think when we talk about cooking energy and all this topic, whether it is negative or positive, GIZ has been at the center of it together with the ministry. And right now, as we speak, we're talking about going into another higher tier of cooking. In the past, we were talking about improved cook stoves, adding efficiency of stoves. Of course, there is still need of that because biomass is still a big concern, but we're looking at other options. Biogas, we are now implementing in the country a lot on biogas issues, the whole issue of e-cooking that I just mentioned. So there could be other aspects that we can look into, including regulation, but certainly we are working with the government here, and we will continue working with them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Pablo, do you have last word?
Thank you. Yes, I can speak to just a few other things. So yes, awareness raising and training was one of the things that were discussed, and also in the is to raise awareness and support training. So I think this is recognized. Of course, there's a lot to do in terms of that, and there's no silver bullet, but it is one of the aspects that is being recognized and is being implemented by the Ministry of Energy. I think the other aspect is, so yes, definitely involving the youth in all these processes is key. Just yesterday, we were sitting with one of these youth organizations, and it was fantastic to hear what they were working in terms of raising awareness in waste management. And for us, this is a great opportunity. We are already discussing how to involve them in the implementation of our waste management projects, to raise that awareness and to tap into that great talent and enthusiasm that is certainly there. And then just the final comment in terms of mobility. Yes, I mean, e-mobility is great, but I think we need to look at it from the terms of outcomes. And this is for any sector. What do we want from that? So that we don't focus just on one silver bullet technology. So e-mobility is great, but what we really want is less time in terms of transportation, better access to jobs for improved transportation, less pollution. So many of these aspects can be done without e-mobility. This is really about organized transport, and this is something that happily I have seen happen in places in my own cities where I thought this is never going to change, and I've seen those things changed. So I am very hopeful as well that many of those strategies can be implemented in Uganda.
Thank you very much, dear panelists and the participants. Can we give a big clap? As you can see, a number of issues came up, and I think these are follow-up things that we need to do. We are talking about climate resilient transportation system. We are talking about clean cooking and lighting. We are talking about bioenergy, renewable energy, involvement of the private sector, civil society, and the young people. We are talking about climate financing, or renewable energy financing, afforestation, the infrastructure. We need to work on the infrastructure, the physical planning, and also promoting green investments. And then the issue of credit rating needs to be addressed. And then waste management, waste to energy, climate smart agriculture, subsidies to make these things affordable, exploring opportunities with the Green Climate Fund and other funds. And we are talking also about various opportunities, capacity building, awareness raising. But as a challenge, one thing which came up clearly is coordination. Now, this coordination is something I had been talking about, not only with the development partners, but also government. Coordination between government, ministries, departments, and agencies, coordination with private sector, academia, coordination among a very big challenge. And then the issue of pooling resources together so that you can have a greater impact. And we have also talked about doing simple things which have greater impact, like giving solar lamps for mothers. It can save life from indoor air pollution. And also we talked about the issue of carbon credit, and also now that Uganda has the energy transition plan, development partners, we need to fund that plan so that we can really implement that plan to really power the country. Then the issue of surplus energy people are talking about, and also dim energy. We had been paying for dim energy for a very long time. That should really stop. Let our people be connected. If we are told we have surplus electricity, let them be connected, and we see whether we still have surplus energy. Let us put some heavy industries and see whether we still have surplus energy. I think that will be very, very important. And then the policy issues, we have to work together. In a nutshell, all of us should work together, government, civil society, academia, private sector. I think that will be good to address some of these challenges in the country and move the country forward towards the desired goal. I want to thank all of you, the participants and the panelists. Can we give a big clap? Thank you very much. And this is the end of our session. We are sorry we started late and we ended late. Thank you very much. Can we?
Maybe we'll allow for a group picture with the panelists. Dr. Brian, I'd like to invite you to just come and guide us through the next couple of activities. But one more round of applause for our panelists. I think they've done a good job. UN Women, GIZ, WWF, GGI, thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to request that we give another round of applause to the outgoing panel of discussants. And the chairman, Honorable Songa, thanks for doing a great job. We noted that that was a panel discussion on policy advocacy, but specifically focusing on the development partners. We listened to a number of recommendations that came, some of the right enabling environment for us to do our business or to commercialize the initiatives that we do. The next panel is going to continue from where that with the development partners stopped, and it's going to look at a sincere discourse on energy access and affordability, but this time addressing or getting responses and contributions from the government players. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Brian Isaviri, and I'm the Commissioner for the Renewable Energy Department at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Allow me invite the following panelists representing key agencies, departments, and ministries of government to take us forward in the same discussion. I want to invite the representative of the CEO for UEGCL, Dr. Kayondo. Please join the panel. I also want to invite Mr. Mbaga Tuzinde, the representative of Wumeme, to join the panel. I will invite Engineer Caleb to also join the panel to give the perspectives of government. And then I will invite Mr. Edward Irula from the Electricity Regulatory Authority to join the panel as well. To get the regional perspective on the policy issues, allow me also to invite Engineer Ariho from the East African Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency to join the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause as the team joins the stage. I see Mr. Edward coming in carefully. You know, when you're from the regulator, you must be very careful as you make decisions and guide. So please, Mr. Edward, make your way to the stage. As they get their way here, I just want to remind the audience that we've just had a very good discussion from our colleagues from the development partner space. And now, like I've already indicated, we'll start listening and probably get answers to some of the questions that could not have been covered by our partners, but now specifically from government representatives. I know that some of the colleagues will join the panel, but allow me in the interest of time to start right away with those that have joined the panel. You're welcome, gentlemen. I want to start from the regional perspective, then bring the reality closer home. From Engineer Ariho, speak to us about IACRI and some of the policy regulatory issues and of course the initiatives that we have had that speak to initiatives and approaches for improving affordability of energy within the region of East Africa. Engineer Ariho, please.
Thank you, Dr. Brian. I'm Engineer Dennis Ariho. I'm the lead technical expert on energy efficiency from the East African Center of Excellence for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, IACRI. This center was established by the East African community to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency on behalf of the community. We understand that the East African community is at different levels in the policy development and implementation in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Today's discussion, I'm going to focus more on the renewable energy efficiency. IACRI's mandate focuses on 5 pillars. One is on regional policy harmonization, awareness and capacity building, research, development and innovation, investment promotion, and knowledge management in the areas of renewable energy and energy efficiency. So we look at ensuring that we harmonize the policies across the region, and not only development of these policies, but also implementing them at the national level and regional level. IACRI is working with WWF to develop the ESC renewable energy policy. Actually, this policy has already started. The development of this policy has started, and we request for participation of all of you in this policy development so that we put in strategies and interventions that will improve energy access, renewable energy in our community. We have also started discussing on issues of green hydrogen, where actually we have started discussions with the GIZ Kenya. They have a lot of interest in developing green hydrogen, and we believe also GIZ Uganda is also interested in that. So we are interested in starting with the baseline study on what's happening, the resources for green hydrogen, what are the opportunities and what is the potential. And then after that, we look at now having the East African green hydrogen strategy. So there are, I believe, working together we can utilize our water resources so that we can generate hydrogen by the process of electrolysis. And then we could actually use this green hydrogen in our industrial sector, especially for heating purposes, but also in the transport sector. IACRI has developed a strategic plan for the next 6 years, from 2025 to to 2030. And the key areas in this plan are ensure that we increase electricity generation in the East African community. We promote renewable energy development. Then we are also promoting clean cooking, looking at e-cooking and all other methods of cooking. Then the next one is productive use of energy. Then energy access in the displacement settings, green hydrogen and energy transition fuels, energy transition minerals. You understand in the value chain for when we talk of energy access, and we are only looking at importation of energy products, it affects affordability. But once we have products manufactured and assembled in the East African community partner states, of course, there will be issue of job creation, increasing the GDP of countries, and attracting investors to come and invest in our countries. Another strategy we have is on business development, innovation, and entrepreneurship. We'd want to see the international private sector, the local private sector to come and fill the space. Because once we have more companies coming in the renewable energy space, then we expect the cost of production of energy products, the cost of generation going down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer. I know we have two amongst the panelists. We have two representatives of institutions that have been at the center of getting our people to access power, particularly at the distribution side. I want to come to you, Engineer Caleb, right away before I bring in perspectives from Umeme. What are we doing as government? Where are we? What initiatives do we have in space that at a policy level we think will advance our access and affordability?
Thank you, moderator. Good morning once again. Yes, the issue of access to electricity, I think my colleague has listed out a number of some of the efforts that we are implementing so that we can increase access to clean energy. Of course, it goes without saying, one of the key policies that government put in place is the issue of the connections policy, to see that we reduce the cost of people connecting from the last mile pole up to your household, that being the meter and the solido. Government came up with a policy to see that that component is financed, because we found that much as we were extending the network and the grid, a lot of people were having so many challenges covering that expense. And as such, we've been implementing it, and I think we are due actually to update this policy so that we can see how to enhance our grid connection, currently standing at about 25% countrywide. The other strategy that has come into place is the National Electrification Strategy, which is largely looking at extending the network to key growth centers, and also putting more emphasis on densification and intensification efforts. For especially, we have a lot of mushrooming developments, be it factories, be it small and medium enterprises, be it households that have mushroomed within the existing network and also without. But also key among the efforts is what one of my colleagues has mentioned, the issue of enhancing the use of off-grids. And we put in a lot of efforts together with the moderator to see that we enhance the use of off-grids, whether it is standalone solar systems, whether it is pico hydro generation plants, whether it is, name it. There is a very long list of how this can be done. Over and beyond that, I think also the several projects really, because moderator, you talked about the initiatives. There are several other projects that have come on board, and we are very happy to have partnered with a number of development partners, including the Electricity Access Scale-Up project that is targeting to connect a little over 1 million households or entities to the network. And as such, we hope that within the next coming years, in a short period, we should achieve at least 50% grid connection and a little over 80% connection to the network. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Straight to Umeme. I know that you've been managing probably the biggest market of electricity in Uganda, and you'll continue up to the first quarter of the next calendar year. What are those specific initiatives that you've been involved in, particularly those that address access and affordability within your footprint as a utility company? Please.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning to you all. As the utility, whatever comes through, we are supposed to do. Now, some of the policies that are under implementation include the EASP that he did talk about, the scale-up project, where our aim is to connect as many as 1 million people the next 2-3 years. We started this year. So far, we've connected 196,000 people, and we intend to connect up to 300,000 by the end of this year. And of course, into the first quarter before our term runs out. Then there are also regulatory policies in place, like the cooking tariff, where customers who consume beyond 80 units, between 80 units and 150, get preferential tariff of 412, and that is supposed to encourage people to use this for cooking. Those are some of the two I can talk about that we've implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We started our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, at the consumer side, and we know that's critical. But amongst the initiatives that have been presented by the panelists, we note that demand will grow, particularly from Engineer Kalib's presentation. We note that we want to grow our access, but not only access, but access that is affordable. That requires that we also concurrently grow our generation capacity. And I want to come to Dr. Kayondo. Speak to us of the strategy that as a government and indeed as the agency, you are putting in place to make sure that the generation that we have in space meets the projected demand, which surely will grow in the short to medium term.
Thank you very much, Dr. Isabile. Good morning, everyone. I think we've started discussion, like you've rightly put it, looking at access, how do we expand that? But I'm sure everyone in this room agrees that without that generation, there will be no access. Without generation, we cannot start talking of affordability. So basically, generation is at the start. UGCL is a government of Uganda utility charged with generation, and we have a number of strategies in place. First of all, I would like to address some of the comments from the previous panelists who have, first of all, alluded to excess supply. They have talked about the 52,000 megawatts that is in the electricity policy, that is of 2023. What is happening at the moment is we currently have about 2,000 megawatts of electricity. As UGCL, we contribute about 60% of this, and in our initiatives and in our strategic plans, We are targeting basically implementing some of the government objectives of how do we now increase capacity. We understand, and my colleagues from the transmission, from distribution, from Omeme will tell you that our demand is growing at about 10%. And the resource that we have at the moment of about 2,000 megawatts will most likely take us up to close to the end of this decade. By around 2027, 2028, we are going to have exceeded that capacity that we currently have. So what is UGCL currently doing? UGCL is implementing government projects. Recently, we commissioned the 600 megawatts at Karuma. We want to expand the capacity so that at any point in time when the energy is required, it is available. That is one of the things. The other strategy that we have in place, and this is being implemented through our strategic plan of 2023 up to 2028, which is also aligned to the aspirations of government, is to, in the next 5 years, develop a pipeline of about 2,000 megawatts that will also contribute to the capacity of the country. Additionally, still related to the excess capacity, you realize that most of our power comes from hydropower. Almost 80% comes from hydro. UGCL takes cognizance of that and looks at a diversification of the mix. How do we get a mix of hydro, of solar, of waste to energy, of wind, of geothermal, and so on? So we've developed a strategy to do that. We are currently doing studies on floating solar to make sure that it complements the hydro resource that we have. That's one of the strategies we are implementing. The other one is we are working directly with our line ministry, that is the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, to see how we explore our diverse geothermal resource that we have. We currently have about a potential of about 1,500 megawatts in geothermal, which would also be a very good component in complementing the current energy mix. But beyond that, we are charged with the operation and maintenance of the facilities that we currently have. And you're aware that we are currently operating Nalubal and Kira power stations. Combined, that's about 380 megawatts. But the operation has to be efficient. Some of these power plants have aged. That's why it is in our strategy that we will do the rehabilitation of these power plants so that they continue to be available. And currently, UGCL has some of the least cost electricity, provides some of the least cost electricity on the grid compared to other generators in the country. So it is important to be cognizant of that and how it directly influences accessibility and affordability at the end of the day. The other thing that we are very keen about as UGCL, and the discussions from the different panelists have been talking about the research, about having young people in the renewable space. UGCL is very deliberate on this. We personal energy, we are doing research on biofuels and bioenergy. So all these are initiatives that we are trying to pilot from UGCL, and we hope that beyond the pilot, we can now go ahead and implement all of these. And they're targeting at having a diversified energy mix so that tomorrow, when we have issues like challenges of climate change, maybe when the flows in the Nile or other rivers that support our plants have dwindled, at least we know that we can turn on our geothermals, we can turn to the waste to energy, we can turn to solar, and be able to provide the electricity resource to everyone in Uganda. I think those are some of the strategies and initiatives we're having. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. We'll come back to some of those targets, but now I want to invite the regulator, Mr. Edward Irola, to speak to us on some of the advances that we've made to the clean energy that we are all desirous of. Edward, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm called Edward Irura. I'm representing the CEO of the Electricity Regulatory Authority, and I work as the Director of Finance Services. Electricity Regulatory Authority regulates electricity in Uganda, and from generation, where we produce the electrons, that segment, transmission, and also distribution, plus import and export of electricity. This question, moderator, if you asked before the second generation reforms, because the electricity supply industry has really transformed and has evolved over time. Looking back in 2000, when the regulator was formed, and those initiatives by government, policy, and the law on electricity and forming the Electricity Regulatory Authority, it created an environment where we were trying to overcome the constraints that we are facing around that time, 1999 and 2000. And we have seen really growth. We are not yet there. There is a tremendous growth. My previous panelists have already mentioned we have just a short-term, medium-term, in quotes, excess because of other constraints. For instance, there are constraints in access. We have access levels which are really below what we expect. There are targets which are set. When you look at the transmission segment, certainly there are constraints. Electrons cannot be transmitted from where they are being generated to where the load centers and where the users, the end users are. And because of that, what is the Electricity Regulatory Authority doing? One, the role or the objective of regulation really is to encourage competition where possible. Of course, we know government has been a monopoly of UTCL, but in the second generation reforms, the regulations that were put in place now because of the law is what we are calling the independent power transmitters. That market is going to change, or it has changed, so that we are able to transport, if I can use the word transport, to transmit these electrons, which we are calling excess for now, to load centers and to the end users. What is independent power transmitter mean? It means that we shall encourage competition in that area. The regulations have been put in place. The rules have already been defined so that there are private players who will come in, be licensed. Currently, we are looking at two companies, investors, who are willing to invest money in the transmission so that these electrons we are talking about, which are excess, are able to be transmitted to improve the access level and also to the load centers. The other thing that the regulator is really doing is on the tariff structure. I know we've talked about affordability, issues of affordability. You know the word affordability is relative. It is the willingness, somebody is willing to pay, and the ability. The regulator carries out what we call the cost of service study. And this cost of service study defines households' preference in terms of what they are willing to pay and some of their ability to pay. For instance, in the tariff structure, the regulator has put in place is what we call the lifeline tariff. The lifeline tariff, for instance, allows talk about the one to increasing demand. For instance, there has been this initiative, of course, the directive by the president, the 5 cents. We are not yet there, but there have been efforts to reduce this tariff to 5.7 cents kilowatt hours on the off-peak, especially for the large industries where we have set consumption targets or threshold. Off-peak 5.7 and shoulder 6.8. That we believe will increase demand in terms of consumption. But there is also cooking tariff. The cooking tariff is the normal tariff, which we talk about 800, depending on the exchange rate and inflation. But the 81st unit up to the 150th unit is charged at 412. Of course, there are many domestic consumers who have tapped on this and they are using it. We have also put in place what we call declining block tariffs, where the threshold for large and extra large industries, where they consume up to a certain unit and the other units are consumed. As a regulator, encouraged, we worked with the government partners, of course, GIZ, KFW, and the World Bank, to simplify our licensing for renewables, for instance. We know we can only achieve access in this country if mini-grids and off-grids, the private investment in these mini-grid and off-grids, because we know government alone cannot manage to increase access without the private players. So our licensing regime for these off-grid and mini-grid have been so simplified to the extent that we have been able to define, for instance, when the grid arrives, what happens. What will happen to the equipment, because the issue of mini-grid and off-grid has been the issue of cost and the tariff. And colleagues, you will allow that when we are talking about investments in these grids, an investor does not listen or believe on sentiments and emotions. I know Uganda, we have low access, please come and invest here so that you can give. They will have rational decisions. And these rational decisions are based on principles. They want to recover their costs. So for you to have that, the regulator is trying to encourage productive use of energy so that these mini-grids becomes bankable and financially viable. We have also what we call the rebate policy. This rebate policy allows individuals or investors or business people who want to connect and extend power to their premises, as long as they're productive use. This will allow UMEME or any licensee in that area to connect, and you invest in this scheme, and that cost is allowed to power in educational institutions. We have tried to do some pilots on some institutions. We have worked with the biomass to the electricity. The most important thing that the regulator also does is that has created an investment climate that allows investors to be able to recover their investment. You'll recall that never defaulted anywhere to not to pay the investors. All the investors in Uganda in the electricity supply industry recovered their money. And these investors talk to each other, by the way. And that makes it that the electricity supply industry is a viable and sustainable. So the investments that have been approved in these segments, for instance, in the distribution, in the transmission, in the generation, and these ones are through the tariff, have been fully recovered. Uganda, in the sub-Saharan Africa, I think apart from South Africa, has been one of the countries that has been able to environment because of the cost-reflective tariff, because of the transparency and accountability of the regulator, to ensure that the investors' confidence is constantly and predictable. The environment is predictable, that when they invest, they are able to recover. However, I have to say this one with a disclaimer that, of course, looking at the country like Uganda, which is like any other country, like any other country in sub-Saharan Africa, the three strands of affordability, reliability, and access are a bit of a complex. If you want to have reliable power, you may have to invest. If you have to have access, you must invest, and invest not cheaply. So what we are saying as regulators, one of our recommendations is we need to have what we call blended financing. And this blended financing, so that it can be able to, is slightly cheaper, But also we have seen that Uganda, the risk profile has gone down. We should be able to negotiate with these investors because unlike 2000 to date, there are many things that have changed. The country has grown. The investment climate has changed. The risk profile has changed. So there must be a kind of a blended financing for us to achieve access, to be able to have reliable power, and to ensure that all our country, for instance, because people are really tired of darkness, are lit. I think for that, I would like to stop here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edward. Ladies and gentlemen, we've listened to the presentations of the different panelists speaking to us on the many initiatives that they are doing. I want to come back to all the panelists and ask a common question. We've spoken about the many good things that we are doing, and as government, on many occasions, we are told we say very many good things. And I know along the works that you're doing, you've had some challenges, but you've also had some lessons. I want to come back to each of you. If you were to do something extra, what is that one or at most two things that you think need to be done if we are going to go to the next level, in addition to the many things that you're doing? I want to start from the regional level again. I want to come back to you, Engineer Ario. What are those one or two things that we must do in addition to the very good things that you've mentioned that we are doing at the region? Engineer, please.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. The key things, two of them, one is human capital development, or human resource development in the renewable, not many. And those at the diploma and the certificates are also few. So if we want to have this transformation, we need to invest in human capacity. Yes. And to invest in human capacity, we need to allocate finances by government, development partners, and the private sector. We need to invest because you cannot do research, development, and innovation without training and capacity building of the human resource. I think that is still lacking. As a country, we need to look at that and invest. The second one is on standards. If we are to deploy energy access, we need to ensure that we have standards being developed and implemented. Standards for solar panels, for water pumps, standards for cables. Our market is flooded with substandard products. And it looks like we are not regulating. Products are entering and reaching the market. So the stakeholders invest in renewable energy, but then they work for a short time. So we need to do something. Let us not only have the policies, but let us implement and regulate these products in our market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I know there are many youth in this audience that will surely ask which kind of human capital development they need to do, because they will tell you we have no jobs. So we need to guide them. I want to come to you, Engineer Caleb. Beyond human capital development and the standards and the guidelines that we need, what else should we do to advance access and affordability?
Thank you, Chair. Moderator. Allow me to begin from where my colleague has ended, the issue of manufacturers. We've been trying to promote the BUBU policy in electrification, and thus far I think we are doing well with regard to contractors, the labor and transport components as we normally call it, and the other aspect. But the issue of supply of materials, I think, is something that if we can put efforts towards improving that area, we would go a long way. I think thus far we have made very good strides in issues of poles. and a few other materials, but transformers, accessories, and all these other items, we still have a lot of work to do. First and foremost, like my colleague has mentioned, issues of standards and specifications, but also affordability. These people need to be able to compete with the other international manufacturers from other countries, Europe, China, and to mention but a few. And it is very key because if we want to extend electricity to Munyonyo, after they have constructed this conference hall, getting materials from Namave is just maybe a 1-month process and you're done, opposed to having to import them. That notwithstanding, if we are not able to address the issue of affordability, we might be taking one step forward and two backwards. So I think we have a lot of work to do in that area. The issue of network refurbishment and strengthening, one of my colleagues has hinted on it. I think we need to have a conversation around what can be accommodated in the tariff and what cannot be, because waiting to see that the entire network, especially on the distribution side, is refurbished and strengthened through the tariff might be a bit of a challenge. And like one of my colleagues mentioned, we might need to look at other options such as concessional financing so that we are able to refurbish and strengthen the network. And then I think, Moderator, if you'll allow me, the issue of mini grids and the existence of the network. We cannot run away from off-grid solutions. Right now, our access is somewhere about 60%, but the biggest chunk of it, or the biggest portion, is actually contributed through off-grids. That notwithstanding, we know that through the different government efforts, the grid has extended closer to a number of these beneficiaries. So we need to find a way of protecting the developers of these off-grids and also be able to still continually promote them, because it is not possible to achieve the government targets that have been set in the energy policy of access with only grid extension. However, we still have to find that balance because it is a very crucial point. Lastly, the issue of well leaves acquisition. This one is, I think, a discussion that goes far beyond just this conference, and I imagine bringing it up makes it even all the more political because it has a land connotation to it. But government, I think, needs to add more efforts in supporting development projects in lieu or in light of the fact that there are these regulations we need to adhere to, because much as we know the importance of having to compensate people for well leaves, for acquisition, I mean for right of way, and to mention but a few, sometimes they contribute to stalling projects. If you were able to achieve access, let's say 40% by 2030, you might achieve it in 2035 because you had that issue of compensation that you needed to deal with. So I think it is something that as government we need to sit down and we brainstorm on and we see how best to find a solution around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Caleb. The need to have localized supply chains is critical. The need for us to improve our network, but also diversification of options, and indeed the big challenge as a country, particularly around acquisition of well leaves, which has been a bottleneck in most of our projects, is critical. In generation, Dr. Kayondo, what is that we must do to grow our generation potential from the current about 2,000 megawatts to what we've projected within NDP for about 15,000 megawatts? What is that one or two that we must do?
Thank you very much, Dr. Savi. I think I'm going to speak about two issues. One is that we need to really and carefully think about the integration of renewables into our energy system. There's a lot of talk on solar, on wind, on geothermal, and so on, but we've not yet had a strong integration of these energy sources. I understand that we need a large base, which is now basically formed by the hydropower plants that we have. And I think it's time for us now to be really critical and decisive on how to get that done. To paint you a picture, the power plants that we've been developing take an average of about 7 to 10 years. And if we are currently having a capacity, installed capacity of about 2,000 megawatts, and of that 2,000 megawatts, you have an available capacity of about 1,600 megawatts, and your peak demand is above 1,000, that gives you a room of about 500, 600 megawatts to get on the grid. And all my colleagues here on my left and everyone in the room is talking about increasing access, they're talking about industrialization. These are all going to be heavy power users. The challenge on my end is that tomorrow you're all going to need power, and we need to think about where it hydro, hybridized, and so on, so that at least we pump up that as we also think about the larger hydros and other energy sources. I think that is one of them. The second point that would be a game changer for me, I think, is going to be on how do we innovate around the financing aspect? How do we get financial resources to carry out these projects? Should we consider the options of PPP? How do we get other private parties with public and see how we develop some of these projects? Energy generation projects are usually capital intensive, and you need to have very innovative financing to pull that off. I'm happy with the reforms from the first generation reforms, brought in a number of independent power producers, and we had a flood of them come into the energy generation space. Competition has been stiff, and we've grown capacity that way. But now we need to think of how do we go beyond that and achieve the goals that we are targeting in NDP4 or in the Vision 2040. I think all this will require us to be more innovative and to think straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been ranked for the last few years as the best regulators in Africa. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, you noted a number of initiatives that the regulator is doing. That said, there should still be room at the top. What else do we need to do to stay on top and even advance at the Electricity Regulatory Authority?
Thank you very much. Maybe just to add on my colleagues, the panelists here, on the issue of what do we need to do. I think for me, one, we need to continue investing in technology and perhaps sort of research, because when you look at storage, issue of storage, power storage, should we have time and money put aside to invest into research in terms of storage, battery storage? We all know that we are here. Perhaps when we go home, all of us is when we light, we switch on TV, we start cooking, then around midnight we are sleeping. However, our plants are redundant at that time, and we end up also paying for that capacity. Is there a way we can invest that we can have batteries that can be able to store that power? Perhaps the generators are running when we are sleeping and can be utilized at the peak. It's just something I'm thinking, but this is something we can think about. Technology, improvement, research, because there's a lot of suppressed demand in Uganda, for instance. We know, all of us, even when we talk about access levels being 57, on-grid 22, and maybe 30-something off-grid and the solar batteries, there's a lot of suppressed demand. Now, if this demand is unlocked, given now the new reforms and initiative in transmission, that power will disappear. But also, we need also to agree that supply must always be ahead of demand in the electricity. He has talked about how long it takes to put up a plant. So what do we need to do? Do we want to attract investors? Person comes here, he puts out the industry, then he waits for power to come. Which comes first? Electricity should be there so that industries can come. You cannot say, you come, set up an industry, I want to employ people, but I'm waiting for electricity to be generated. Nobody, I've told you, investment is rational decisions. It's not about emotion, it's not about sentiments. So if we are to grow and increase on our electricity supply industry, supply must be always ahead of demand. But we need also to look at how do we finance without necessarily constraining others. And this financing is another point, that we must also think about a clever way of financing. By the way, one of the things that for me I feel happy about, but which we need to invest into substantially, is value addition. Increasing the product use of energy. And this can be done when we extend, for instance, electricity in what we call rural areas. What is that electricity doing? We have said it many times, or the leaders, the politicians have talked about, how is that electricity being utilized? Is it only for putting light, or somebody is improving on something? Maybe a welding machine. From welding machine, maybe to mending something. Maybe to starting up a cottage industry. That's the only way that if investment is done in those areas, maybe we have a redeemer with the parish development model, I don't know, but maybe it's one of the areas, if people can pick it up. Maybe I like the previous speakers who talked about investing in agriculture, for instance, irrigation. I mean, if electricity was available in those areas, don't we think we could expand and grow a small garden into a bigger industry? So the productive use of energy is one way that however much we are looking for financing, this electricity should also be used in a clever way. Now, the last point that we have learned as a regulator is around packaging of projects. We've had this issue of dimmed energy, and all of you don't like it. We don't like it. Paying for something you are not utilizing. And as a country, we have gone through it. Cabinet and the policy and the Ministry of Energy have realized and have said no more dimmed energy projects. However, we have also realized that the dimmed energy clause being removed was a good thing because the risk is reduced, but also it does not attract investment because the projects, they don't become bankable. They cannot get financing. So we're thinking that one of the issues we need to innovate or to do, because we have seen it, that when these investors are coming, can the evacuation line be part of the project? So that government is relieved from guaranteeing to build or to construct an evacuation line. So that this is already packaged as part of the recovery into the tariff. So that when a plant is constructed, it has reached commissioning, it's able to transmit this power directly, rather than government continuing to pay dimmed energy. The last point I also think is we need to increase access through scale-up project. I agree with the Ministry of Energy that where possible, it is something that we encourage and will support. Because as a regulator, we have tested this through the hybrid connection policy, where the consumer was paying a big percentage also, I mean half of the price of connection, and also the other financed through the Uganda Development Bank. So we need really to accelerate access. There's no question about that, because we've seen the areas where electricity has gone, production, economic activity has really grown, but also electricity has a multiplier effect. The last point for me is the thermal, investment in the thermal. I mean in geothermal, not thermal, sorry, geothermal. Geothermal, it's a technology that, of course, the ministry is taking up, but we also encourage that from the studies, of course, in Kenya and other countries, this is a low-hanging fruit. But what is the challenge in geothermal? It requires exploration cost, front-loading of those costs, and as such, it's not attractive. Our request to government is during the resource allocation, we need to be deliberate to invest money in geothermal. It's a game changer because, one, we believe it will be a low cost. We have a vast expanse of geothermal in Uganda, and it will increase on our generational capacity. Perhaps it could also contribute to the 52 gigawatts our Excellency is talking about. And it will also light Uganda, but also cross-border. We have opportunities. For instance, Southern Sudan, we have opportunities in Eastern Congo. We have many opportunities where we can export this power and make more money, not necessarily for Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, and particularly those that are just joining us, we've had a very rich conversation here with representatives of governments and, of course, agencies and departments of government, but also a representative from a regional body, EACRI, discussing what else we need to do at the policy level to create that environment that will allow commercialization of the initiatives that will grow access, but also in an affordable way. One of the areas that is going on at the regional level is that there are initiatives for harmonization of policies, regulations, and standards under EACRI, but we've also learned that there are a number of initiatives at the ministry level, particularly those that speak through the National Electrification Strategy, and a number of projects such as the Electricity Access Scale-Up project, which are targeting to grow connections. We heard that in terms of transition, there are initiatives around cooking, for example, the cooking tariff, but at the generation level, we have a generation plan that is pursuing diversification of our options for access to electricity. At the regulator level, we heard that there are electricity reforms, or within the space, there are a number of reforms that we think will grow the demand, but also promote health competition amongst the private sector. We talked about the bulk buyer, but also the independent, the diversification of the bulk buyer model, but also the independent power transmitter option, which again is intended to attract private capital in the sector. We heard from our colleague from the regulator that it's important, and indeed other panelists echoed the same, to have private capital, which we think as government is critical if we have both public and private capital. In terms of recommendations of the gaps and areas that we need to continue working on as a government, but also as a people that are in this ecosystem, we agreed on a number of them, and I'll quickly just highlight them before we invite some contribution from the audience. There were proposals that we still need to continue building our human capital, particularly in the areas where we still have gaps. The standards are still low, and these standards reduce consumer confidence and make our efforts to grow access a challenge. There were suggestions that we need to localize our supply chains to ensure that there is access to these, particularly getting manufacturing closer home to enhance access to these technologies. The networks are still weak, and as such, our initiatives around enhancing access are a challenge. So there are recommendations of us to innovate, particularly on how we can use our tariff to capture the costs that will enhance the strength of our networks. We need to diversify our options, both with on-grid and off-grid, but in terms of generation, there is a recommendation that we particularly need as a government and as a country to invest in geothermal, given its unique advantages. As a country, wherever we have major construction projects, such as those that we undertake in the electricity space, we have challenges of acquisition of well leaves. And as a people, we need to innovate on how we can quickly acquire these well leaves to have these projects run. We may need to also innovate unique ways of engaging with communities, provide well leaves that then would unlock and enhance these projects. There were recommendations that we need as a country, given our endowment with excess renewables, we need to come up with mechanisms for integrating these renewables in our systems, particularly speaking to the need for us to start hybridizing our systems. Where you have hydro, you can also have solar, just like the floating solar initiatives that our generation team is working on. Financing to ensure that we run our initiatives in time. We agreed that we need to innovate. So research and innovation is going to be critical, and particularly around power storage, to ensure that we maximize the potential of our infrastructure is critical. We have agreed that we need to have this hugely suppressed demand unlocked, because that's critical. It enhances the viability of our investments in the sector, but also helps us to create jobs that would come with this unlocked potential. That is related to the need for us to go beyond lighting as the opportunity that electricity or energy provides, but look at the productive use of energy, and particularly as we talk about our parish development model and also other initiatives by the government of Uganda. One of the challenges that the government has had, and indeed which was echoed by our panelists, is around packaging projects that ensure that when we generate, for example, we evacuate, but also projects that would help us as a country harness the potential that comes with modern and green forms of financing, such as carbon financing. The last but not least was a proposal and a recommendation from our panelists of the need for us to scale, to take this to scale with all the options that we have, both on-grid and off-grid. Those are the recommendations that came from the panelists, and also their report on the initiatives that are going on. In the interest of time, we want to open up the floor if there are any questions before we can close these panel discussions. I see quite a number of hands. I request the facilitators to move around the microphone. Quickly, please make your question brief, and you preferably target it to one of the panelists to get proper response. Who wants to start? Who has the microphone close?
All right.
The microphone, you start. Please
We'll
go.
start with Hajat here.
Yes, please.
Keep it short, sweet, and straight to whoever you want to ask.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you for that wonderful presentation.
If you don't mind, please stand such that we can get the question clear, or speak up louder.
All right. Good afternoon once again. I'm Dr. Miriam from Kampala International University. All right, I must say Uganda is actually doing very well in terms of electricity in Africa, yeah. So my question goes to the policymakers and the regulators. Is there a way the policymakers are looking at collaborating with youths through the institution to support students who have innovative ideas to grow this energy sector in Uganda, in terms of maybe having an MOU to collaborate with students, to assist students, or to support them with ideas that can grow the sector?
Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, do you want just to summarize that question? My panelists did not get. You can take it on. You were close to the.
I'll ask my sister to summarize.
Just a summary.
All right. My question is, are the policymakers looking at ways of assisting students who have ideas?
We can, I think the question is clear. Collaboration with academia, supporting students and researchers to support the sector. The next question.
We'll take a round. My sister, if we can take
the next one with the microphone, please stand and speak. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Herbert Muhaise, an industrial chemist. My question goes to the policymakers. 50% of the working Ugandan, that is 11.2 million, earn less than 150,000 shillings a month. And for sustainability of the projects, and for the consumption of the renewable energy, people need to have money in order to consume. What are the policymakers putting in place to ensure that the consumers actually have money in their pockets in order to consume the products they put on the market?
Thank you very much. Affordability.
Good afternoon.
Please do.
My name is Kumar. Now the suggestion or the question is regarding now if someone wants to set up a power plant, it takes 12 to 18 months just on the approval process. Why doesn't ERA and MEMD creates pre-approved zones so that they attract investors just to come and start constructions?
Okay, approval process. We'll hear from there.
Let's get a lady now.
Okay.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hannah Teresa Mompare, and my question is, from the previous panel, we saw that the major issue in energy transition is awareness. So as different stakeholders in government, UMEME, UEGCL, the regulatory authority, how are you able to, be able to spread the awareness on this issue of energy transition? Because if it's to be effective, I believe it has to start from the grassroots level of communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, our panelists. I'm called Alex Mugar.
Go ahead, Alex. Oh, sorry.
Can we get another microphone?
Yes, I said I'm called Alex Mugarra from Makerere University Business School, Energy Economics Governance Associate. I was listening here carefully. People are mentioning about deemed energy, surplus energy, affordability issues, accessibility. And then I heard somebody talking about transition. In Western Africa, these people are talking about transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Now I'm wondering, which exact definition are you talking about in this conference? Thank you. Second one, when it comes to accessibility, myself, cost or the price of a product, you think about the cost of producing that product. Now, in cost of producing electricity, I can put it in 3 levels. There is cost of producing at generation, cost of transmitting, and then distribution. And then the distributor also has to put his margin because he's in business. Now my question here is, of the 3, that is the generation cost, transmission, and the distribution, if I group them together, and then the margin, where is the problem? Because when I looked at the statistics from ERA, your website, sir, the cost of producing electricity at generation level is like 300 or less. But to me, I pay about 700 as a consumer. Why that margin or deviation? I thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take 2 more.
We'll have a lady here and take one more.
Good afternoon, team. My name is Agnes Mkamjema. I'm going to talk about refugees. In Uganda, we have 1,756 and 793 people. As you say, we are going to see how we are going to transform it about energy. When you look at the refugees, most of them, they are not capable to do those things. And when, for example, when you go in the settlement, they used to provide 7K per month each person. did you think the refugees, they are able to enable that things? The second one, the most of them, they are women. When you are doing your searches, some of time you didn't give us the possibility to go there to mobilize those people. And because of language barrier, some of them, they are not getting what you are saying. My humble request is, as the government, when you want to implement those things in the government, because of the refugees, there are very many, as we have 13 camps, including their urban settlement, also implement those things in our company. For example, in my company federation, we have 1,000 refugees. Most of them, they are women. You can find a challenge where you found one single room, you found 12 people. Why they are using charcoal stove.
Question captured. Can we have one last one?
Last one.
Who is the lucky one? Let's have one from right at the back. I think we are taking, oh, there is one more. So let's take the other one. Let's take his, then have the one at the back. Please go. Gentlemen, please. Then we have the last one at the back.
My name is Richard Kanyike. I'm one of the pioneers of solar in Uganda because I started in 1986 with Solar Energy for Africa, USA. One of the things that I have seen is that ever since solar was installed, there is capacity to run a feed-in tariff for the country, and it would be a low-hanging fruit for government. But this has remained on the policy books for a long time, and I don't see anything being done about feed-in policy. When will this really start?
Thank you very much.
That's my question.
Feed-in tariffs for solar. Lastly, please.
Thank you. My name is Molly Mbekeka. My question goes to the regulator.
To?
The regulator.
Okay.
About the cooking tariff. It starts from 81 units to 150 units. But we know that on average, households consume about 30 units. Now, to get to 80, there is a difference of 50 units. Was this cooking tariff targeting households or commercial users?
Thank you very much. Let's have questions. I will distribute the lighter ones, then allow the regulator to lift the biggest. So I want to come to Engineer Riho. Please answer the question of academia collaboration. Then Engineer Caleb, you'll speak about how our income that apparently is not good enough can afford this electricity. Then I'll allow you to also speak about issues of energy for refugees. And then I'll allow Mr. Mbaga to speak about awareness, energy transition, and then Dr. Kayondo and the regulator, you lift the rest. Let me start with Mr. Mbaga on awareness.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you for your questions. About the awareness on energy transition, of course, as a utility, we look to it, and we have a team, a communication team that does all that and shares widely regarding what actions are being taken or what the company intends to do in order to move forward. Maybe I think what we could do is to put in more effort and share more widely, especially with all institutions like the academia, so that the message goes out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So he says we need to do more. This conference is one of those opportunities that we have as government and as a people to discuss and grow awareness about these issues. Yes, there is room at the top. We can continue growing more, but we note the recommendation on awareness. Next, Engineer Caleb, please.
Thank you for the questions. One of the things we are doing, or efforts we put in place to see that the consumers of electricity have an increase in their incomes so that they are able to afford electricity, I think is what everyone has been mentioning here, and we've also embedded it in the National Development Plan 4 that is yet to be discussed in the near future to enhance the issue of productive use of energy. Of course, this is from 1 million aspects, be it use of more efficient tools, use of inventing new ideas, connecting small and medium enterprises so that people can enhance production. And to mention, but if I think we could talk about productive use of energy the rest of the day. But also, the other aspect we have put a lot of effort in is what we talked about, the issue of the boo-boo policy. As we speak now, I think the latest access projects that we churned out, about 70% of the projects were benefited to the local participants. And here we are talking about manufacturers or pole treatment plants who buy trees from the local growers to treat, and we purchase them and we are able to use them in electrification efforts. When we go on ground, we do not import labor from Europe, from China, or from wherever, so that we can do these skilled and semi-skilled activities, so that the monies can go into the local population. And still, we've made it even a little more strict. If a project is in Karamoja, we don't bring people from Kisoro to come and do the casual labor work, in Karamoja. But the Karamajongs or people from Busoga or people from the west, where the project is, those are the direct beneficiaries. So there's a lot of effort in that regard. You said I also talk about refugees. Yes, we have a session on access to, but that notwithstanding, just on a highlight, currently government has put in a lot of effort with regard to refugees, together with several development partners, because Uganda hosts quite a very big, the lady mentioned 1.7, but actually thought it was 1.9 million refugees currently within Uganda. And these efforts have come both in grid extension as well as off-grid, and also we are having discussions around productive uses of energy in those refugee hosting districts. But I think I will leave out the longer detail that we can have it in tomorrow's session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Engineer Riho, quickly on collaboration with the universities and academia.
You are about supporting the youth and the students in research and innovation in renewable energy. There are universities which are having research programs already with the funding from different development partners. So it is to encourage the students and the youth to be on the lookout on these opportunities in universities. But also these NGOs we have here in Uganda, for example, they have capacity development as one of their core mandates. So they look at skilling and also business incubation. And then there are also some incubation centers available in Makerere and in other institutions. But this requires the youth also to be aggressive, to be inquisitive, to work hard and look for these opportunities, because they will not find you when you have not looked for them. So it is very important that also the government and development partners invest more in research development. For example, in all our education institutions, how many have very good state-of-art laboratories? So you'll find that students are entering class and doing a lot of theory. So let us change that. Let us have a paradigm shift to having more of practical teaching than theory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last questions, I will allow you, Edward and Dr. Kayondo, to share them. And I just want to repeat them for emphasis. One of the delegates asked about independent power procedures. You need to speak to that. Affordability, cost of electricity to the consumer and how it builds up. The other one is about the feed-in tariffs for solar, which has not been revised for some time. And the last one, and very critical, is the cooking tariff and how it was designed. So share them. You can take the easier one.
I don't know which Dr. Kayungo is comfortable, but she's saying all are mine, but no problem. I will attempt to respond to them. But if you feel that we need to engage further, we could engage it after this. But you remind me, repeat one by one. What I recall, which is on me now, is around he talked about the cost of electricity. Yeah. What increases that tariff? Yes. If I can get it. But I just want to give you one analogy and also tell you the responsibility of the regulator. If you plant your potatoes, let's assume this is an agricultural country, and those potatoes, we call it generating them, you have to transport them to Kampala in the market, and in that market, normally people who plant do not sell them in the market, they sell them to another person puts a markup, and he ends up in the market, somebody has put a stall and he's paying. The process itself is in 3 segments. And the role of the regulator, why it came, was because there was a market failure. Regulation of electricity is because there was a market failure creating monopolies. So what does the regulator do? The regulator sets tariff. And when he sets the tariff, he considers what we call reasonable and prudently incurred costs. In other words, if you are in a competitive environment, for instance, there are 3 or 4 umemes in this Uganda, for instance, would the same cost be the same in terms of efficiency? So the regulator builds efficiency to ensure that if we mimic competition, to ensure that if a cost is not reasonable, it is removed. You've had the regulator being petitioned, you've had disagreements, because those costs, we try to mimic what we call competitive environment because of the market failure. Now, to answer your question specifically, the tariff will include all reasonable and prudently incurred costs. And when we talk about prudently incurred costs, we don't mean that the profit of a distributor will not be put there. It includes a return, which was negotiated. It includes a return of cost of capital. So, to tell you where the costs come from, the cost is a combination of the generation, prudently incurred cost of generation, transmission, and distribution, including losses. If I planted potatoes, I'm carrying them to Kampala. There are some potatoes, because of the packing of the sack, they will get lost on the way. The same happens to electricity. Because of those conductors, high voltage conductors, sometimes because of the weather, they will expand. Electrons will disappear, and you'll pay for it as a consumer. Those are what we call some of the losses. Of course, there are other losses because of vandalism.
Thanks.
Let me stop there. But that's what I can explain, how we arrive on the tariff. And the regulator is independent. He does not, it is only mandated by the law, and he sets those prices using those criteria. Now, let me go on the tariff of the cooking tariff. One of the initiatives on the cooking tariff, which we worked with so many partners, including the ministry and the development partners, was first ensure that you ask the issue of transition, I don't know, to help. Maybe if it is confusing, I may have to use another word. For people to be motivated to stop using biomass or charcoal, to use e-cooking or electricity. And research was done, and consumption habits were also found out that on average, And when we're talking about average, we're including different sizes of families, that they consume up to 80 units per month. We have to be careful that after the 80th unit, the 81st unit up to 150 units, we also need to be careful that if you extend it beyond the 150 units, you attract commercial. So on average, yes, it is around 80 units household, different households. So that research was done. If you want data, we can give it to you. We can show you how.
Smart 24, driving business.
By the name, I'm called Geramia Roshan. I'm from Madiokolo district. I'm a single mother of 2 kids. I'm a saloonist, but I'm a born of Madukolo, but I'm basing the saloon in Nebi district. It's in Nebi town. So I started this business salon after my senior 4. I really wanted to know how to shave hair. Because on the side of women, I also know it. Now my most focus was on the side of shaving hair. My teacher, Morgan, yeah, he was so good to me, so good to us. We are like 20 people who are so much interested in